Hello and welcome back to another in-depth video. Today we are talking about the potential for another severe threat next week caused by a dry line. So, let's start off here with the European model. This is our simulated radar where we currently have our current system producing severe weather in the south as well as soaking rains into the northeast throughout the day today. Then we start to see some low pressure systems start to roll into the Rockies. Now, one of these will be more powerful than the others. You see your 989 millibar low pressure system, which is relatively strong for a low pressure system in the Rocky Mountains. But that low pressure system is strong enough to bring down that cold air from Canada and bring up that moist air from the Gulf of Mexico. You can see some leading moisture here in parts of Michigan, Minnesota, Iowa, and areas of the southern Mississippi River Valley. Eventually, this low pressure system starts to move into the northern plains, where we could see that cold air interact with that moist air, and we start to see some heavier snowfall rates in parts of Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, and the Dakotas. But at the same time that cold air is interacting with the moist air coming up from the Gulf of Mexico in the southeast as well, and we could see severe thunderstorms popping up in Louisiana and Arkansas. Now, as this system moves forward, we kind of see a shift from some very lead thunderstorms to a stronger line of thunderstorms here. As this heavy snow continues, we see the development of a very strong cold front right in here. Usually, we look at these isobars, which is areas of equal pressure. When you see these little drops, those little valleys, troughs, whatever you want to call them, that's usually where a cold front or a warm front is. So you can see that our cold front's right in here, and there's that cold, dry air behind it, and that warm, moist air in front. We see that interaction, and we start to see some very significant severe weather. We could see thunderstorms all the way up to the Dakotas and Minnesota, and then all the way down the Mississippi River Valley to Louisiana. But at the same time, we have a very strong low pressure system driving all of this. And that wintry side, we could see potential blizzard conditions in parts of Nebraska and the Dakotas while this strong severe threat is occurring. And we see this continue. This storm is maturing. It's reached its peak intensity here, where it's still relatively immature but strong. Now we start to see it mature even more and become more complex, and eventually it'll start to weaken off. But during this peak phase, the kind of prime phase of the storm, we're going to be seeing blizzard conditions on the west side, and then the eastern side of the low pressure, we're going to see a very complex cold front, a very strong cold front, bringing thunderstorms from Minnesota down the Mississippi River to Louisiana. And those thunderstorms continue into areas of the Tennessee River Valley and the southern Mississippi River Valley, from New Orleans up even into areas like Louisville, where we could see areas that have gotten hit by all the major severe threats so far this year. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama have been hammered so far this tornado season. Get even more severe thunderstorms with the potential for even more tornadoes. And with this strong cold front and the dry line that we'll talk about in a second, these could be even more unstable, and that is what's going to really make this a major severe threat. Now, this low pressure system continues to weaken off. You can see that the millibars are rising. The pressure is rising, showing that this low pressure system is weakening. But at the same time, the actual cold front itself is still there and is really churning up those thunderstorms from Gary, Indiana, all the way down to Mobile, Alabama. So the I-65 corridor will be impacted at this point. This is during the day on Thursday the 14th. Eventually, the low pressure system moves into Canada, and at the same time, the cold front starts to weaken off, and we see kind of the simmering down of the severe threat until it reforms off the coast, but that is none of our worries at that point. So what is driving this potential severe threat is a dry line, which is basically a cold front, but instead of a cold air mass sliding under a warm air mass, it is a dry air mass sliding under a moist air mass, which causes the moisture to rise, creating instability and thunderstorms. So this green area here is the warm, moist air that we talk about every single time we have thunderstorms. This is one of the ingredients for thunderstorms. Then this brown area here is dry air. So basically these numbers here, this is the temperature that the air would have to be to reach 100% humidity. So there's even areas here where the air has to be at -2 degrees Fahrenheit to be 100% humid. So that is very, very dry. So as we see this dry air build up in parts of New Mexico and Arizona, all the way down to -19 degrees Fahrenheit to receive 100% humidity, we kind of see this next resurgence of moist air on Sunday into Monday. This is going to set the stage for that severe threat. That's the warm, moist air in place as that low pressure is starting to move into the Rockies and into the plains. And as that moist air is drawn up before the cold front forms, we are going to see that moist air get all the way up into Wisconsin, Iowa, even into areas such as Michigan, maybe even into Minnesota. And then we start to see this sharp gradient of dry and moist air. You could see just a couple of miles from 50 degrees Fahrenheit to receive 100% humidity to 27 degrees Fahrenheit. So that sharp boundary is where we're going to see that air mass, that warm, moist air mass in these greens, blues, purples, rise over the dry air mass in the tans and browns, and we start to see that interaction gain a lot of strength. So you can see a lot of dry air, that very harsh dry air, get really up close and personal to that moist air, which brings up that dry line. So the dry line extending from Nebraska all the way down to Texas, which could create large supercells with all of that moisture getting forced up into the upper levels of the atmosphere and creating those really impactful thunderstorms. We typically see this a lot in Texas, since we have the dry air of the desert moving into Texas from that west to east flow that drives all weather systems, even the dry air. Now, that will create a lot of hail and strong winds, but also could create those tornadoes if the direction, which the direction of the warm moist air is usually south to north, and the direction of the cold and dry air is usually west to east, which it is in this case, that bulk shear, which we talk about sometimes, that shearing in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which creates spin. So this dry line could create all of those thunderstorms, and that dry air continues for a while, even pushing all the way east into the northeast before the dry line really settles down. But the most significant areas that will be impacted by this dry line are right along this boundary here on Wednesday into Thursday. But that is all the information that I have for today. If you found this video informational, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any more weather updates. That's all I have for today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.